The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Greetings, boarders, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games you play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network and thrilled to be part of the Dice Tower Network as well. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who has no problems dropping the beat. Josh, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm glad that, you named two pretty much nameless people, in my opinion. Like, who are we right now?
Well, to answer the question, while Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland are talented musicians in their own right, is the lead singer of the band The Police, who definitely steals the show. And the person providing the sting for this show is none other than Jamey Stegmaier, the main man behind Stonemaier Games. Jamey, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
So the important question, are you a fan of the band The Police or Sting?
I am. Yeah, I would be hard pressed to name too many specific songs, I think, but whenever I hear their most played songs, yeah, I'm familiar with it. I enjoy it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that is great to hear. That will hopefully be the most difficult question we ask you all night. But Jamey, for our podcast, like about half of our listeners are very video game focused and might not know who you are. Yeah. Can you introduce yourself a little bit and just let folks know kind of what you're all about?
Yeah, I am a game designer and a game publisher. As you mentioned, I run a company called Stonemaier Games. And some of my games and our games include a game called Viticulture, a game called Scythe. That's probably the most known game that we have. Charterstone, Between Two Castles, Between Two Cities, Euphoria, and most recently Wingspan. And so for the video gamers out there, maybe you like Scythe is our most popular game, and it's the only game that has a digital implementation so far, which I know is something that we'll delve into, but maybe some of your audience have heard of us through that digital implementation.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Hey, if you are a regular listener, we're going to forego the typical format a bit this evening to maximize our time with Jamey. So we're actually just going to jump straight into our topic of the show, which is going to be picking his brain and getting some perspective from him on the board game industry. Because what you may or may not know, dear listener, is that if there is someone who is more open and sharing about the business of board games, I don't know who it is other than Jamey Stegmaier. So if you want to have some knowledge dropped, it's probably about to be dropped. So with that, I will turn it over to Josh, who I know has a few burning questions.
Yeah, my hesitation is because Jamey's been so busy with all the people recently, I didn't want to ask him too many prying questions about,
I'm okay with prying questions.
Wingspan.
Yeah. Let's do it.
But we'll start kind of like where you started. So I've owned Scythe, the physical board game, for over a year now, and I just haven't had time to get it to the table. We have a 2-year-old in the house, so typically board game time is just 8 o'clock at night. My wife and I finally settle down for the day, and she looks at all our games and she's like, I don't know about that one tonight. So I'm like, okay, I get it. Yeah. So actually last weekend I was playing on the PC with my buddy. We both decided to bite the bullet on Scythe digitally. So okay. I've only done the tutorial so far, but already I can tell like the complexity on the PC itself is great. So I can imagine getting it physically in my hands. Mm-hmm. Is going to feel even better. But our question around that for our video game audience is, to my knowledge, and I think you confirmed it, Scythe was really the only Stonemaier game that's made the digital leap. And with all these publishers branching out into board games, becoming video games, especially like the Nintendo Switch is becoming a big platform for that now. Yeah. Do you see any current Stonemaier games or maybe future ones looking to the digital frontier?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, well, for Scythe itself, so the answer I'm going to say is a little dependent on this, because for Scythe, the deal for Scythe Digital came together probably around 3 years ago. And I thought that things would happen pretty quickly after that. And I was a little surprised because I'm so used to the tabletop realm where I have complete control over the speed of how things move along. Scythe took fairly long to actually get out there. And so right now we do have a number of games in the works, but I don't really know when they'll actually come out or if maybe even the developers will even finish them. So right now we have Wingspan Digital in the works. We have Charterstone Digital in the works. In fact, I just saw a build of the Charterstone Digital the other day and it looked spectacular. They're doing an awesome job with it. Between Two Castles is in the works and Viticulture is in the works. So a lot of them are in the works right now with different developers.
That's great.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question about Charterstone Digital?
Yeah.
So I finished Charterstone.
Uh-huh.
And maybe this is too much to ask, I guess, or maybe you can't go into this because the video game industry tends to be very private about what they're willing to share about games that are like in progress. Obviously, the board game industry to a degree as well.
Yeah.
Is this a situation where if you finish Charterstone, you get it digitally, you finish it, that you will then be able to play that finished game moving forward with everything that you have created and that my finished digital version of Charterstone will be different than someone else's?
You know, that's an angle that I don't think we've talked about. We've talked about something similar to that, but I really like the idea of, well, actually, so yes, with the campaign. So if you play a campaign through on the digital version, you can then save the final version and you'll be able to keep playing with that version.
Okay.
What I almost thought that you were saying there was if you've played through the cardboard version, can you take your completed village and put it in the digital version? And
that was actually going to be my next question.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's what we haven't thought of that until you just said that. I love that idea. That's really cool.
Okay.
Yeah. I see no reason why that wouldn't be able to be implemented given what they're doing with the app.
Okay. Very cool.
Nice. I'm excited for that Wingspan app. Hopefully it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I see it on your shelf there. Have you played Wingspan?
Yes. Kyle and I are both Stonemaier champions, so
Yep.
Oh, awesome.
I got it. To be honest with you, like I couldn't even tell you necessarily how it came to be that it was in my in my view, but it just popped up, and for whatever reason, I wouldn't call myself a bird enthusiast or anything really, and I just couldn't look away from it. It was was like Indiana Jones all over again, and I'm so glad I got in early, and we played it right away, and I'm a big fan of it, and I can't wait to introduce it to like our little gaming group that kind of gets together every once in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan.
That's great.
So let's move on to, well, it revolves around Wingspan a little bit. So you're constantly sharing, you share pretty much everything. You do a weekly video about game mechanisms on YouTube. You're constantly talking about new games you're playing. I think the last one you just did was it Turn Order?
Yeah, my Sunday sit down was about Turn Order a couple of days ago, and I do 2 videos during the week, real short videos where I focus on one specific game and my favorite mechanism in that game. Yeah,
yeah, and I love that, and it's just nice to see the transparency, just in general, like on your thoughts on everything, and with the Wingspan stuff that happened, which we can talk about. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, so. We did this to Colin Flores from Flat Hat. We made him choose his favorite child in Guardians, which he reluctantly did. So I'm going to ask you, so like if you're hosting a game night with people who haven't played a Stonemaier game, so maybe it's better to say, for people, our video game audience coming into board games, if you could pick a Stonemaier game for them to start with,
yeah,
what would you pick? And then what would you pick for maybe more seasoned gamers like Kyle and I?
Yeah, I like that little twist there that you added about if the people coming in may not be big board gamers, but they are big video gamers. What game would I play with them? And the answer, my answer in general, when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, what kind of game should I play?" is I try to throw it back at them and say, "Okay, what type of games do you enjoy? What types of themes do you enjoy? What are you the most excited about?" And so for a video gamer, I would probably go with Scythe for a video gamer because I think it echoes certain elements of video games. Although Charterstone does too. There are plenty of, in fact, a number of video games inspired Charterstone. But because it's a campaign game, I wouldn't throw it on the table at game night with someone new. That's one that I would plan ahead for. And the second part of your question was, what was the second part of your question?
So maybe more experienced gamers, or even close personal friends, things that you would bring to the table at your own game night.
Yeah. For more experienced gamers, I would probably put down viticulture and maybe viticulture with Tuscany. I generally teach viticulture, just viticulture. I don't throw Tuscany in there from the beginning, but especially if someone has maybe played viticulture once or twice, throwing Tuscany in there and taking it up a notch it's a lot of fun for me, and it's easy for me to teach, and it's generally a nice creative mental challenge for other people that I play with.
Great. Yeah. I got my viticulture for my wife for Valentine's Day.
Oh, wonderful.
We talked about it a few episodes back.
Yeah.
And we decided to play it over a couple glasses of wine or a couple bottles of wine. and it's a great game, but I see people call it a mind meld a lot, and we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into when we started.
Yeah.
So my recommendation was maybe a glass of wine, not a bottle of wine.
That's a good recommendation. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of that as well. So like I said, it would be silly if we didn't even mention Wingspan.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how much you talked about it in the past month. So my question is just about you during the Wingspan launch. You're very open about behind the scenes things in board game development. Also, you're very involved with the community. I'm in the Wingspan group on Facebook, and also I think you're in a couple of the board game groups I'm in on Facebook as well. So you're very visible to people. So why is it that you dedicate so much of your time, and it must be a lot of time because I see you everywhere, unless it's just your free time, despite the fact that you're literally the only person in the industry doing this. I know that might not necessarily be a motivator for you, like such and such is doing this, so I must too. So
right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I think it stems from a few different things. And there are other creators that are very active in various groups in different ways. James Hudson from,
yes.
James is very active. And in fact, he has some of the things that we were talking about tonight. He's very similar about. He's happy to talk about other games. He truly loves games. I love seeing that from him. But part of it is that I am continually flattered and honored that people even want to talk about the games that I design and publish like that. I don't think I'll ever get over that, because this comes from a place of me designing games as a young kid, 6, 7, 8 years old, through my teens, and hoping that even just one person would play a game with me. So now when I see like I cannot, if as a kid, I could not possibly even imagine that it would become what it's become now. So I don't ever really want to take that for granted. And also, I think social media is a truly wonderful thing with board games, in that if you have a question about a game or you have a strategy that you want to share, or you can just do it now, and suddenly you can talk to a bunch of people about that. And how cool is it that you can also talk to the designer about it?
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to be part of those cool moments, whether or not I'm the designer or I'm the publisher, or if I'm the gamer sharing my thoughts with another designer about their game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say as a board gamer, it really means a lot to me. And you were the first person to respond to my Wingspan question. And I looked at my wife and I'm like, Jamey answered me first. Like, that's crazy to me. So to see, like, that means a lot. And for people like me who, like, sometimes like a celebrity likes a tweet or something like that, those small things really go a long way, I think. So as a fan, I just wanted to say that I appreciate how accessible you are to your fan base. And it really bugs me when I see people give you a hard time, but that's just like, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like I see how much you're doing, and we're just in that fear of missing out nature that everyone is just jumping on your back because they can't have Wingspan. People paying $1,000 for a copy of Wingspan because they can't wait 2 months. Like, it's just a crazy thing. But
well, it's neat to see. I mean, oftentimes those things, the good and the bad, stem from a place of passion. Or we're passionate about games. We love games. And sometimes that passion turns into a $1,000 eBay purchase when you can just wait a month. And sometimes that turns into an angry email to me because I didn't make enough copies of the game. But I try to remember that even in those tough moments, that someone's excited about a game, and that's good. I think that's a good thing. It's just how people express that in different ways.
Great.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. When I saw the prices of Wingspan on eBay, Josh gives me a hard time because I don't take the plastic off my games before I play them. And I have Wingspan, but I haven't played it yet. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, I mean, I could sell it. I'm like, I really don't want to do that. Yeah. And Josh was giving me a very hard time of like, well, if you had just opened it and played it when you got it, this wouldn't be a problem.
I have to open every game. If I don't shrink my games as soon as I get them home. It's the biggest difference between me and Kyle is he leaves them all shrunk until he plays them.
It helps me keep track of my backlog. It's an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
So, Jamey, as a publisher, you actually spend, it seems, more time talking about games that you have not published compared to games you have published. Are you worried at all, or do you ever get, think about potentially you are promoting or, encouraging gamers to pick up games that are not yours and maybe at the expense of if someone's looking for a Euro rather than getting, viticulture, they're picking up some other game that you're talking about? Is that something that you ever worry about?
It's a great question. But no, I don't worry about it. And you're probably right. There are probably times where I lose a sale because I recommend a game so highly. But I love games. I really love talking about games, both from as a gamer and as a designer. And so I like that I have an opportunity to talk about games with people from a design perspective, mostly on my YouTube channel, but also on other platforms. And that people are willing to listen to me and share their thoughts. I learn a ton from reading the comments of my game design YouTube channel. But also it isn't necessarily a marketing decision, but I do justify using some of my business time on those videos because I know me personally, when I see another designer or another publisher and all they talk about is their own games, I don't love that. I mean, I like to think that they're in the industry because they love games in general, not just their own stuff. And at the same time, the opposite happens. I mentioned James Hudson. I am drawn to people and other designers and publishers who clearly just love games and want to talk about games. And that makes me actually more likely to buy one of James's games. So that's like kind of my marketing justification for it. It's not something that I think about a lot, but every now and then if I need to justify it to like our investor or something, that's my justification for it.
And I think it's really interesting because watching your YouTube channel, I think it is very interesting to see someone who designs and publishes games look at other games and talk about them from a very much a like design standpoint of like, here's what my favorite mechanism is. Here's why I like this. Here's why it works well in the game. And it's really just celebrating what games are and what cool things people are doing, which I think, the whole rising tide lifts all boat situation.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually really cool to go see that. And it's not just it definitely does not come off of, oh, I'm just being nice. Like you can see your passion for the games that you're playing, while you're talking in those videos, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of games that I really like and I really enjoy, and this is not, I'm not saying that just because you're on the podcast. I played Charterstone. I played all through Charterstone in the course, probably about a month, my partner and I.
Awesome.
And it was a good experience. I talked about it a lot on the podcast and kind of what the experience her and I had playing that was. But it made me wonder, what has been the most challenging game for you to design and publish? And it had to be Charterstone, right? Like Charterstone's the hardest one, right?
It definitely was. It definitely was. Yeah. Charterstone took the longest of all of them. It took 18 months to design. And Charterstone, I don't know if your listeners know, the big thing about Charterstone is that it is a legacy game, which means that it features permanence as a core mechanism of the game. You are making permanent changes. You're putting stickers on the board. You're writing on stuff. You are unlocking new stuff. And in Charterstone, there are many different branching paths you can take. And so not only did the design take a long time, but it also took, and I haven't ever thought about game design this way before, but it took more brain power than I've ever had to expend on a game before, because every little change had a ripple effect that it could affect so many different aspects of the game. So there would be times where I would just like sit and stare at a blank piece of paper for hours trying to calculate, okay, if I make this one little change, this is how it's going to impact all these other aspects of the game. And so it's kind of for that reason that I probably won't design another legacy game, but I'm glad I gave it a try and learned some stuff from it and had fun with it for the most part.
So that, I guess, is going to kind of spoil my follow-up question, because I was going to ask, if you were to do a Charterstone 2,
okay, yeah,
you know, is there something that you would be like, oh, I absolutely would never do this again? But also, what are the things that you think, yes, I think this worked really well, and I'm very proud of this in this game?
Yeah. So there are two sides of that. What the first side is things I would do differently. I think the biggest failing of Charterstone is that while it is possible to play the game just by using the rules, but that doesn't stop me from recommending the FAQ to anyone who plays the game. Because I want them to have the smoothest possible experience. And so I wish the game, I wouldn't say the game needs an FAQ, but it benefits so much from it that I kind of feel I failed a little bit with the rule book and the way the rules unravel. I don't know. What was your experience with that? Did you have to use the FAQ at times? I
did use the FAQ. And I think that's the thing I told Josh when I was playing through it, is that I always felt like I needed more information. But then when I went to the FAQ, it basically just confirmed what I already knew, but I didn't trust myself enough to be like, no, this is exactly what it is exactly what it says it is. I always felt like it couldn't be that straightforward, but it almost universally was. But the FAQ was like, yep, you're good. Just continue doing what you're doing. Right.
And that's a legacy game thing, I think. When you're unlocking rules at different times, you kind of want that confirmation that you're doing the right thing. On the flip side, there are things that I'm really happy with Charterstone. There's some surprises and reveals, stuff that I don't want to spoil for anybody in case they still play it, but there's some stuff that I really am proud of in terms of the things that we did that are not in any other game ever. And I have thought of a few other things like that. Like playing with the idea of permanence in a tabletop game is just really cool and fun. And I love what Rob Davio has done with his numerous legacy games. And so maybe someday I'll accumulate a big enough list of stuff that you can only do when you have permanence that I'll do another one, but it'll take a while before I get to that point.
Awesome. To kind of change gears a little bit, you did a video on your YouTube channel about Red Rising, the game I failed to design.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who read the books. I read the Red Rising series. And I was kind of curious. I know in that you had talked about encouraging people, if they had ideas, to talk to you about them and all of that. I don't ever remember seeing a follow-up to that. Has there been a follow-up? Is this a thing you're still looking at? Kind of where is everything in regards to Red Rising?
Yeah, it's actually very, very recently. I was playing a game with a friend of mine at game night. Well, actually, so to catch up before that, I tried to design 4 different versions of Red Rising game, a book series that I absolutely love. And I'd been in contact with the author, kind of had his blessing to try and then present something to him. So I tried, I failed. And then finally I did that. Put out that video. I got a few submissions from people who, like, a lot of people had ideas, but I think a lot of people realize that having an idea is a lot different, very different from actually designing a game. And so we ended up getting like 4 or 5 submissions. All were ambitious and really interesting, but not what I really wanted to publish. And so it's kind of as sat for the last 6 months, nothing's really happened until around 2 weeks ago. I was playing a game that I won't mention here yet because I don't know what will happen with this, but I was playing a completely different game, a game that I love. And midway through the game, I was like, wow, this would make a really good Red Rising game if we changed a few things, made it probably significantly different, but took the core mechanism in this game and made it Red Rising. And so a friend and I are playing around with it. And so I'm kind of going back to the drawing board with a co-designer, and we'll see if we can get anywhere with it.
Very cool. I'm going to throw one extra question in here for you that's not on the list, so I hope this is acceptable.
Yeah.
You recently did a video about MSRP for board games and, kind of the cost of or the fear really of publishing a game that MSRP is at $80, $90, $100.
Yeah.
And you went into the idea of how much manufacturing costs, all of that, how all of that plays. And I was actually slightly heartbroken because Scythe is a game I backed on Kickstarter. Honestly, probably easily a top 5 game for me, a game I really enjoy playing. And the fact that you were like, yeah, I really haven't made any money off Scythe ever, kind of broke my heart.
Yeah,
I want you to make money. I think you make amazing games. I want you to make money. But a conversation that Josh and I regularly have on this podcast is when you go to Kickstarter and you're backing games on Kickstarter, it's not, when a game's $80, you're like, ugh, okay. But, you're regularly seeing $100, $150, $200, $250 games to get the full experience.
Yeah.
Because miniatures are so big and all of this is going on. The question I have is someone who has so much knowledge about this industry. The conversation that we've had and kind of kicked around is there are games that have been there that I really want to experience, but I can't justify spending $250 on.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a market for having games that are maybe not as deluxe? And I don't know what the manufacturing cost difference or how this would work out, but you have the game that has miniatures. Is it cool? Is it possible to have a version that has standees instead and all these other things so that the cost is just less, but you still get the experience of playing the game? And I just don't know from a logistics or realistic standpoint. I mean, I know anything can be done.
Yeah. But
is that even reasonable to expect or ask of a publisher to consider or look at?
I think it's worth posing the question. So I think it's a tough balance. And I actually posed a similar question on Instagram today. I posted a photo of Charterstone with the metal coins that were in Charterstone. And I said, what do you guys like? Obviously, we've already made it. This isn't a question specifically for Charterstone, but do you like it when when publishers put premium components in games? Or do you kind of wish they would separate them so that you can have a lower price core product and then you can have the choice to add the premium component? And the results were really mixed. People had different opinions about it. In terms of standees specifically, I think we could look to Gloomhaven for perhaps a good example. Gloomhaven could have had all miniatures for the minions, the enemies, the bad guys, but it uses standees across the board. It could have been probably a $300 game if it had all those miniatures. Instead, it's still an expensive game. It's about $125 retail, I think. But it has a ton of standees in it and very few miniatures. I think there's like maybe 18 miniatures total in it. And they're nice miniatures. But I think that's an example of maybe a company saying we can be successful and have a little bit of both and not go too far with the miniatures and keep the price at least relatively lower than what it would have been. Yeah.
So I think that's just a hard thing is that there's so many awesome games out there.
Yeah.
But it's getting very hard when the point of entry is pushing 3 figures regularly. It's getting a little challenging sometimes.
Good news, Kyle. Monolith is bringing Batman back to Kickstarter for a second go in April. So we can both look at it again and not get it.
Again. Excellent. Well, I know we have a couple listener questions that we'll finish up with so we can get you on your way. So Josh, if you want to kind of take those away.
Yeah, so our friend, we'll call him Mike, but his username is Splake at Toplicious. He sent me a bunch of questions. I asked him to pick like 2 of the top 2. Okay. And the top one he picked, we pretty much already did. So we're just gonna, and I'll read it and we'll go to the second one too. But he says, you've done a fantastic job communicating and interacting with gamers, Elizabeth too, through newsletters, Facebook, etc. This is regarding Wingspan. Where do you draw the line on over communicating? And then since you'll never make 100% of the people happy, and on that note, how do you handle the Varrook assault to throw an internet fit when they can't have Wingspan? Sorry, I'm assuming you probably don't want to answer that part of the question, but is there a line on over communicating? I know we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I have kind of answers to both of these. So as you guys know, I share a lot of information pretty openly on my blog, but there are a few times where I wonder if I've shared too much. And so I try to think about that line at least. With Wingspan, that line may have been sharing the number of copies that we sold via pre-order, because I know that caused a lot of consternation among retailers to no good end either. Like there was no real benefit for them to know that number. Right. And so I might not reveal that as eagerly or as transparently in the future. As for the Varrock assaults, how do you handle the Varrock assaults who throw an internet fit when they can't have Wingspan now? We did kind of talk about that before. But I don't know. I'm excited that people are excited about a game, whether it's my game or somebody else's game. I think that's fun. And I've learned just from an emotional, I'm a human. I have emotions and so I try to, filter certain things so that I can remain emotionally healthy and available to the people who maybe aren't throwing the fits. So I've avoided. There's probably many conversations about that out there, probably on Reddit that I have just not.
I've just go to Reddit. Nothing good comes from Reddit. And then he asks, my little scythe is near the top of his next purchase list for his kids, and he'd love to hear more about how that went from the fan-made version to the full-fledged game. He didn't mention anything about Tom Vassell eating a shoe, but I'm sure that's part of the question too.
Yeah, I'll do the quick hits version of that answer, which is the designer and his daughter, a guy named Hobie and Vienna, his daughter. They she saw him playing Scythe and wanted to play Scythe, so they got together. They made this fan-made version of Scythe with a My Little Pony theme, and Hobie's a pretty talented graphic designer, and so it looked really nice. It was a good looking print and play game, and it caught the attention of a lot of people in the Scythe group and well beyond the Scythe group, to the point that at first I was just like, okay, that's a cool thing. I love when fans make cool stuff with our games. But at a certain point I was like, okay, people are still talking about this. I'd better check it out and play it. And I played it and was delighted by it, and proceeded to talk with Hobie about us publishing it. I talked to Hasbro a little bit about potentially either licensing the Scythe IP to them to make the game, or to get the My Little Pony IP from them. And in both regards, they said no, they weren't interested. And so at that point, we decided just to keep the cartoony feel, but apply our own world to it, which we did with the Scythe. Kind of the Scythe animals are now in the My Little Scythe version. And the My Little Shoe, the Eat a Shoe part is Tom Vassell was asked at Dice Tower Con 2 years ago. This was when like the print and play was being distributed. He was asked, do you think My Little Scythe will actually be published? Do you think someone will publish it? And he said, I'll eat a shoe. So I can't remember the exact phrase, but I think he said, I'll eat a shoe if someone actually publishes that game. Him not like that he wasn't saying the game was bad. He didn't really, I think he only knew the name of it. And so we ended up, when we published it, we sent him some candy shoes so that he could actually eat a shoe on camera as a result of it. And I think he ended up enjoying it quite a bit too, in terms of family friendly games.
Yeah, it was very well reviewed from Dice Tower.
Yeah,
I remember him opening that box in the boring unboxing, and it was gummy shoes.
Right.
It was very funny.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, so Die Hard is going to become a board game.
Yeah.
This year. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
For me, it is. But is it? Have you guys talked about this on the show before? Is it?
We typically have a couple of random things that pop up in our Discord. Die Hard being a Christmas movie, like on the internet, is a hot topic.
Yeah. The other hot topic we regularly have is, does pineapple belong on pizza?
I've gotten that one in my Facebook live chats from time to time. Yeah. I don't. For me, I don't put pineapple on my pizza, but I don't mind if someone else does.
That is the correct answer. Nicely done, sir.
I'll stay out of that one.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jamey, thanks so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate the time. At this point, is there anything you'd like to plug? Is there anything you'd like to tell our dear listeners to follow, keep an eye on? Anything else you'd like to tell them about?
Yeah, so let me answer that in two ways, because I'd love to throw one question at you guys before I go, just since this is the one time we actually get the chat. And the plug, I guess, is that if you do want to learn about our games or learn about crowdfunding and entrepreneurship, which I write quite a lot about, or game design on my YouTube channel, you can go to StonemaierGames.com, and all that stuff is consolidated there somewhere on the page. But if you guys don't mind, I know you have other topics to cover, and I know I have to go in a minute, but I'm designing an open world exploration game that's heavily inspired by Zelda Breath of the Wild and other open world games like The Witcher 3. I know that this is, I've listened to a few of your podcasts where you talk about open world games, but I'd love to hear like the one thing that you love in open world video games that you'd like to see in an open world tabletop game.
Okay.
No, I did not prep you for this question, so I'm sorry. But
no, it's okay.
But if you have anything like that you want to throw out there, it could have like a legit impact on my design.
I can answer that right away. So
awesome.
We are, Kyle and I were like notoriously not big Breath of the Wild fans when the game came out. So we were challenged to replay it with on its 2-year anniversary. Our whole group started replaying it. Mm-hmm. For me, something that, and I don't know how that maybe it would, you'd be able to incorporate it into board game design. I like an open world game that really is linear. I like the illusion of an open world game. Mm-hmm. So games like Fallout, when I start Fallout, I've tried them all, like Fallout 4 or Fallout 3. I exit the vaults, I take a left, and it was the wrong left. I'm level 1, there's level 28 guys there. I immediately die. Yeah. And everyone else is like, well, yeah, of course, you're not supposed to go there yet. Uh-huh. Well, great. The game didn't tell me that. And while it is open world and there's so much that I can do, it's very overwhelming in a way that, like, I play Gloomhaven, and Gloomhaven to me is a linear story. While you have this whole map that's available to you, we can do all these side quests if we wanted to, but ultimately, I have a map. I know what I'm up against, and I'm still living in this open world. But for me, I like that linear track is there, whether I can see it or not. I like to be guided on my adventure, but I know I'm a small portion of that kind of open world group player.
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest thing, and actually I'm going to tie this to a book series, so I don't know how well this will work, but it does apply to games as well. Did you ever read the Demon Cycle books?
No.
Okay. So it's an excellent set of books. So if you like Red Rising, you might like Demon Cycle as well. So just something to kind of think about. But I think for me, when it comes to open world games, and Horizon Zero Dawn right back here is like, I think for me, an example of this. I have to care about the character. Like, I have to care about the person and the characters I'm meeting in the world. And I want there to be some sense of mystery as to what, like, I have a purpose, but I'm that sense of having a sense of discovery or a thing that I'm specifically searching for.
Okay.
So that for me is what I really enjoy when it comes to an open world game. Like, obviously in the video games, like, they look beautiful and you have all these other good things to do, but the hook for me is like, do I like the characters? Am I invested in who these people are? And what is that sense of mystery or wonder that's pushing me or driving me forward while I'm playing? So those are really the things that I'm looking for in that style of game. And that book series does that well, which is why I think. So I've had, as like you were talking about the Red Rising series, the Warden Man is a series who, like, when it comes to game design ideas, I've had 1,000 different game design ideas for it. But like you said, ideas that don't make games. So awesome. But hey,
thank you guys. Yeah, I love those answers. Thank you so much.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this fine day or evening, I guess. We really appreciate you giving some time.
My pleasure. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. And thanks again to Jamey Stegmaier for being with us this week. Just a few little housekeeping things. As always, dear listener, thank you so much for joining us. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter, or check out all of the awesome stuff that we're posting over on Instagram, also Board with VG. As I said at the top of the show, we are a proud part of the PSVG podcast network, and PSVG is on Patreon. We are absolutely thrilled with the support you have given us there thus far. And if you'd like to monetarily support what we do, you can find us at patreon.com/PSVG. But the most important thing is just that you listen and maybe share what we do with someone else who might enjoy our podcast. And yes, we are also a member of the Dice Tower Podcast Network. So if you enjoy our conversation about board games, maybe the conversation we just had with Jamey, and you'd like to dive deeper into that world, we encourage you to check out the Dice Tower Podcast, as well as all of the other members of the network. No matter what type of board games you enjoy, there's going to be a podcast on the network that is right for you. So enough of this housekeeping stuff. Josh, what is some of the big board game news of the last couple of weeks?
Well, let's start with Scyther Gaming, who's launched a Kickstarter for new entry into the, quote, I might need to purchase a different table to play this game, unquote, category with Overbattle, the All War, which is just kind of like large in scale and name.
It is. It is.
So this is from Dice Tower News. So we have an absolutely massive war game style area control board game where 2 to 4 players do 4X style battle for domination of a galaxy. In Overbattle, players take control of one of 4 unique races, spend points to deploy troops, and do battle over the planets and moons of the Broken Unity. Comes with a metric ton of miniatures, dice, crystals, and 1,000+ units. That's insane. So
it's big.
I have the Kickstarter open. I haven't looked at it, but let's see where we're at. So they're at just under $9,000 pledged of $75,000 goal.
That's scary. That's unfortunately
that's something.
Yeah, that's definitely scary because when you're a Kickstarter, those first 48 hours are so crucial. Like your first 48 and your last 48 seem to be kind of where everything happens. So that's a little, I think, a little daunting for them to make up that in the next 24 days.
I was just reading that about Hi-Rise. Did you see that?
Yeah.
They've been getting a lot of support from developers, though.
They have.
Push.
Yeah, and they got there, so that's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they got there.
So initial pledge of $179 gets you with a quote deluxe set. I don't know why they put it in deluxe because there's no other set. So the next step up is $319 for the colony. And then if you want to get everything for Overbattle of all war, you're looking at not shipping. I don't think shipping is included. It probably isn't. $800.
That's for retailers. If retailers
want retail, sorry.
That's 6 copies. That is 6 copies of the game for retailers. Yeah.
Sorry, $319. $319 gets you the whole thing. I can't imagine $800. Well, I can, but yikes. Yeah. So $319 gets you the colony. Overbattle. Oh, that's 2 complete deluxe sets. Mm-hmm. One for collecting, one for experiencing, as they say. So you got to be pretty dedicated. So I guess actually, if they don't do what some of our other campaigns have done, where they add like tiers for miniatures, $179 is the total.
Yep, $179 is the total. Set.
So I guess for what you're getting, if you're getting 1,000 miniatures.
It's not 1,000 miniatures. I believe it is 1,000 pieces.
Pieces. Okay.
Yeah, but it's still like 680 miniatures, I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because then they have like 200 red, white, and blue interlocking stackable plastic chips. But then they also give you 4 storage, like plastic storage trays, one for each faction to store like all of the minis in. Like, I'm really kind of want to see what I see that they have the box, like they show you the box, but I want to know how big this box is.
It's got to be huge, right?
It has to be. It has to be absolutely massive.
There's a picture of it on someone's shelf in one of the videos, and it's on top of the shelf. They have 2 potted plants next to it that are barely sitting on the shelf. Like you could tell they clearly moved the plants before they took the picture.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. That is huge. I see the video you're talking about. That is massive box.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I don't know, Kyle. So we talked about this with Jamey. We talked about this a lot. Just another game in the, oh my gosh, look how big this Kickstarter miniatures game is. Like, what do you think about a game, like backing a game like this without really knowing too much about the gameplay? That being said, you can watch people play in the videos, the gameplay, but they are prototypes.
Right.
So like in a game like this, what pushes you over the edge to purchase it?
So I'll be honest, when I look at how much stuff is on the table when people are playing this game, it doesn't actually seem like a bad value for the price.
Right.
When you're actually looking at the total, how much stuff is in the box, this doesn't seem like a bad value. But when I look at this game, I say, do I have a table big enough to play this game? Literally, it is huge. It is so big. And that's actually my bigger concern is I don't know that I mean, my dining room table is probably big enough, but then I don't know if I have like room on the edges.
Can I buy like a folding table for everything else?
Yeah. Like this thing is massive. And I think it definitely is kind of a showpiece and shows off and really is like, hey, look at how big and cool this looks. And it looks big and cool, no doubts. But honestly, the size of it makes me go, I don't know if I would get this game because price perspective, not bad actually for everything you're getting. I don't know if I have a place to play it.
Right.
But it looks cool. Like
huge.
I'm kind of surprised at what their level of funding is. I thought it would be more just because these are the types of games, these 4X games tend to be, people tend to love them, and they have a very, you have your Twilight Imperias, your Xia Legends of a Drift system. Like you have these games that are bigger and more expensive that people are used to paying that price for and used to putting in the time to play them. So I'm kind of surprised that this newer entry is not funded quite as high as I anticipated that it would be.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking about maybe it's a lack of IP, but then you immediately mentioned 2 games that don't have an existing IP, so that can't be it.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe it'll pick up steam at the end.
Yeah. What for you when
Oh, go ahead.
When you're looking at this, is this something that is immediately no because of the price? Like, kind of what's your thoughts on it?
Do you know what lost me? Wargaming. I just can't get into, like, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I picked up the Fallout Wasteland Warfare game. I think I talked about it. And we tried to play it on one of our Keyforge Friday nights. My buddy who likes Fallout, we're going to play this. It's a 2-player starter set essentially, and you set up the map. It's like one of the fold out like paper plastic key kind of mats,
right?
And like you set this thing up, and they're teaching you in the tutorial how to play. And on the map, on the instruction booklet, there's like 8x10 grid of green. That's like poison fog. And they're like, that's poison fog, but you don't see it on the map. Like you literally need terrain. So like it doesn't come with what you need. So he's like, how do we do that? How do we know where we're going? I'm like, we need terrain. So like wargaming to me is on a whole nother level. So, so that would turn me off from that, especially with that price point. If they were like, it's not really like traditional wargaming, I'd be like, yeah, it looks cool. I'd give it a shot for $80,
right?
Not $180. So maybe it's a game I'll see if I can play at a convention or something.
Gotcha.
When it comes out in 2 years or whenever it's coming out.
Gotcha. Excellent.
Cool. Let's move on. We got Root continues to steal folks' hearts as its awarded Tabletop Game of the Year at South by Southwest. Again, from Dice Tower News, this past weekend, Root by Leader Games took home a Tabletop Game of the Year award at South by Southwest and now sits among the company of previous winners such as Gloomhaven and Arkham Horror, the card game. If for people who don't know, South by Southwest is the largest festival in Austin, Texas, that each year brings together and celebrates multiple creative industries from gaming to music to film. That's partly what makes this award so nice. It's in recognition of a game by a conference that's not strictly gaming centric and is undoubtedly awarding Root for all its artistic merits. Not to mention, for people who missed out on Root, Root is back on Kickstarter.
It is. With
an expansion, the Underworld expansion. But you could also, so for $50, you can get the Underworld expansion and all the Kickstarter goodies for $50, but you can also get the original Root and all the expansion stuff for $150. Gets you the whole game if you missed out on that. If you can't find it at your local game store. So, and also on a budget of $25,000, it's at $1,252,000. Do you have Root? Were you interested in Root? Do you have interest in Root? All of those questions.
I am extremely interested in this game. It is a game that I have wanted to. I was bummed that I missed out on the Kickstarter the first time. It was just a choice of I only had so much Kickstarter money, and it went a different direction at that point. But I have backed this Kickstarter version of it. So as we were just talking about a game for $179, I am backing this game at $150 for all of the stuff. But yeah, I'm very excited. Leader Games is actually located in St. Paul, so not too far from where I live. And they do some cool stuff. Like they have definitely put together, they're getting a following for the games that they do. And they seem to have been really putting together some really quality games in their young career, because they're not a game company that's been around for a long time. You know, they did Vasta Crystal Caverns, which is really highly enjoyed and highly rated, and then Root's their second game, and that's pretty much it. Like that's kind of what they've done and what they've been known for. So the Twin Cities in Minnesota kind of becoming a hotbed because Asmodee North America is there along with Fantasy Flight Games, and now Leader Games next to them in St. Paul. So kind of becoming a happening area up there as far as game design goes. So I'm excited for this. So I'm definitely looking forward to jumping in because the art is just spectacular. This game is just amazing.
Yeah, we almost pulled the trigger at PAX Unplugged because we kept looking at it and they only had a certain amount available for sale, and we just never pulled the trigger because I know it's a little heavy. But for people who don't know Root, and you can correct me if and when I'm wrong because I'm just kind of going off my knowledge of the game, but what makes Root unique, you have this big map. I think it's double-sided also. And it's like a territory control kind of game where each player picks a faction of animals, and each faction has their own objectives to complete during the game, which is really interesting. And you're a lot of times you're trying to take over control points on the board. And what I thought was really interesting is like the cat faction, they start with people on every like control point on the board, which is really interesting. And basically it's these different factions with different abilities trying to complete their objectives while simultaneously playing against like 2 to 5 other players, I believe, like all trying to beat you to their goals. But yeah, it looks great. Just one of those games that you can't talk about, like board games at a convention, without someone mentioning, have you played Root, or I'm loving Root, or whatever.
Right. And it's interesting because both their games, because Vasta Crystal Caverns also completely asymmetrical. Like in that game, you are, going on like kind of a dungeon crawling, cave crawling adventure. But like one of the players even can play as the cave itself. So this is
really?
So this is really seeming to be kind of their niche in gaming of that. Yeah, you have Vast, which is completely asymmetrical, and then you have Root, which is completely asymmetrical, and that depending on which faction you play, like your win conditions even different. And it's a cool, it's a really interesting route for them to go. It's something you don't see a ton of. Like you see asymmetry in games, but not often do you see asymmetry with different winning conditions.
Right.
That are unique to what your character is. So, and that you got to imagine that's not easy to balance. That can't be that easy to design. But yeah, they seem to have done it in their games. People love their art styles that are very unique. And Leader Games just seems to kind of be crushing it out of the park with their first couple designs here. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll end up getting it at some point. I know it. All right, so our friends over at Plaid Hat Games have announced an expansion for their card game, Guardians. Also from Dice Tower News, new heroes are coming to Guardians. So Plaid Hat has announced a new hero pack for 2018, for the 2018 card game, Guardians. Guardians Retribution brings 4 additional heroes to the game, namely Jupiter, Riker, Therian, and Warhead. Heroes in this expansion do even more to push the boundary of how ultimate cards can shape gameplay by including even more double-sided ability cards, ultimate cards. That's interesting. And even an ultimate capable of being reused more than once in the game. Which will be interesting to see how that plays with other ultimates that can't be used twice.
Right. you immediately have to assume it can't be as powerful.
I don't know. We'll have to get Colin back on here and talk about this because I'm very excited for this. And if you go to dicetowernews.com and look at this, you can see the pictures of the 4 Guardians. They look super cool. Definitely, you can see some inspiration for characters, but they're like wholly unique characters, which I really like. What do you think about this? And are you excited to get this pack of heroes?
I actually am. I haven't played Guardians much as of late. I enjoy the game. I have fun playing it. I just haven't played it very much lately. And this is definitely a reason for me to kind of jump back in and be playing that more, So any opportunity I have to play a game that reminds me of Overwatch, I am 100% in to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I really enjoy, like I said, we've sung the praises of Guardians before.
Yes.
I will definitely be picking this up, and so I can get the game to the table more often. I just feel like this game is flying under the radar more than it should. It's a really quality game, and I wish more people were jumping in on it because it's a good time and really easy to play with 2 people. So it's a good game to have at home when you're just kind of kicking things for an evening and trying to decide what to do next. Guardians is a great option to do that. So
yes, it needs more press for sure. I saw someone asking about it on one of my game groups, and I was the first to jump in and sing its praises, and luckily a couple more people jumped in saying how much they enjoyed it. So
excellent.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Guardians.
Very cool. So that's it for board game news for the last couple weeks. Not saying that that's the only news, but that's the news that we're going to talk about. Let's switch a little bit and talk about some video game news, and to not attempt to steal any thunder from the Nintendo Shack, but as something that I thought was interesting. It looks like, according to the Wall Street Journal, which the Wall Street Journal has predicted things like this before or said it was happening before, and it hasn't. But according to them, we are going to be getting 2 new versions of the Switch. And one is going to kind of be a less expensive version that I think is basically meant to take the place of the 3DS/2DS. Like, I really feel like that's the place it's supposed to kind of go. There are some potential mock-ups out there of what it might look like, but the general consensus seems to be it is going to remove some of the features like vibrations, maybe even the Joy-Cons totally themselves, where they won't be removable, but they might be compatible with Joy-Cons if you kind of set it on a stand. So this is going to be one of the supposed versions, and then the other version is going to be a enhanced model that is geared towards the more avid gamer. So looking like potentially Nintendo is going to have, that current Switch model is going to kind of be like the mid-level model, and you're going to have a little less expensive entry-level model and a more expensive deluxe model. Josh, sir, you have a Switch.
Yeah.
I have a Switch.
Yep.
Are you going to buy a new Switch, or do you think this is going to potentially open the Switch up to additional people who maybe don't have it yet, or drive some sales that maybe Nintendo isn't seeing currently? Though, I mean, the Switch selling obviously extremely, extremely well.
Yeah, I don't think they have anything to complain about for console sales.
Right.
I don't know how I feel about this announcement, because I get worried about stuff like this. It's not just Nintendo, but like my Nintendo gaming history from with the 3DS and 2DS and stuff, I'm not a big fan of them releasing new versions of a console I have.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't want to be a hypocrite, because obviously PlayStation and Xbox also do that.
Right.
But I reluctantly buy those things. I don't buy them because I necessarily want them. I buy them because I know that the performance is better, and we just don't know what's going on with these Switch models yet.
Right.
Like, what is the light one? If there's a light version, what are we losing? Honestly, if it takes away that stupid every time I do something in a game that they don't let me turn off, maybe I'll sell my Switch and get the light version, because that's ridiculous to me. You can't turn that off.
That HD Rumble is something else, let me tell you.
I can't. Yeah, some games I'm like trying to play Switch in bed, and my wife's like, "What are you doing? Get out of here!" I'm like, "It's not me. It's the game. I can't turn it off." So that really bugs me. So maybe, I don't know. I mean, I saw the mock-ups for the light, and obviously they're just mock-ups that someone made. I'm more curious about the more expensive model, what that's going to be. They're trying to be competitive. I get it. We have all these rumors of lighter Xbox coming out and all the streaming stuff coming up. I mean, good for them. I hope it works out for them. I think 2 years, I don't feel so taken advantage of with the Switch, because, I've had my Switch for 2 years.
Right.
When I bought my 3DS, and then 2 months later they came out with a 3DS XL, that really bugged me. But I guess shame on me for not doing research before I bought it. So I don't know. What do you think about these two things?
I think it's totally fine. I think that, even if they come out with a less expensive and a more expensive version, I think, number one, I don't have to change the version I have if I don't want to. There's no obligation here for me to purchase anything new if I don't want to. I think that, it seems that the end of the 3DS is nigh. We very rarely hear about 3DS games anymore. So it seems like that is kind of on the way out. So if they're looking to transition families with multiple kids into the Switch, ecosystem, they're probably going to want to have a less expensive version that's maybe a little more durable. I think that makes complete sense. That is 100%. I understand that decision to do that. And I think too, like, the biggest knock right now against the Switch, if you have one even, is that current gen games don't necessarily run super great or look super great on it in comparison to, the current PS4 and the current Xbox One. Now, granted, far more powerful pieces of hardware, but I think the big thing that for me, when I was watching a Nintendo Direct recently, was when they showed Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, it looked terrible.
Oof, that game looked rough.
So do you think an updated Switch, like a higher version Switch, do you think that they have to ditch cartridge?
I don't necessarily know that they have to ditch cartridge. I think obviously for cartridge it's more of a storage space issue, but you could make theoretically bigger cartridges. It's just, is the game going to cost more then, or are they going to rely more on digital downloads? Or are you going to, yes, you're buying this game with a cartridge, but you also need to download, X off of the internet for it, which I can see that not being ideal. But name any disc-based game that doesn't have an update you have to download day one anyway.
Yeah.
So it's really not that different. It might be a little more different from the sense of storage capacity and maybe how you're expecting to balance your storage on your Switch. But from a drastically different than what you're seeing on other systems, it's really not that different. It is maybe a little inconvenient just because I know me personally have a hard time with my Switch maintaining good wireless connections. But other than that, I don't think it's that egregious of a situation or that big of a deal, to be honest.
Gotcha.
So I am interested, though. I'm really interested, especially for a more powerful one, to see what they do and what that looks like. And is it hitting 1080p? I can't imagine they're pushing for 4K, but hitting 1080p, is it hitting those things, more consistently and regularly with third-party games? Because obviously Nintendo first-party games look spectacular. So they know what they're doing as far as their first-party stuff. That is for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So Josh, it sounds like that's you. It sounds like we're just not going to own anything anymore.
Oh, no. Do we really own anything?
I know. Well, and that's the big thing. We're going to own even less. So it seems that our mostly streaming future is upon us, as Google announced at GDC their new streaming service called Stadia. Now, I could go into all the specs and stuff about Stadia, but hey, PSVG just launched a Stadia podcast.
Stadia Pod, check it out.
Stadia Pod at Stadia Pod on Twitter. Be sure to check it out. It's all, if you want to know all about this streaming platform and probably other streaming platforms as well, it's a good podcast to check out. Those folks are super stoked about this announcement and everything that Stadia has. So here is my question for you, Josh. Now that we're a little removed, all the hot takes are done. How do you feel about, number one, Stadia? But number two, are you cool with moving to a future where obviously next gen, I don't think we're going to be completely just streaming only. Microsoft has kind of clearly indicated that it will be a big part, but not the only part of their future plans. PlayStation, I can't imagine, is going to move completely to streaming.
Right.
How do you feel, though, about moving towards a streaming future? Is this something you want? Is this something you're in for? Kind of what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I have a lot of feelings about it. I don't know that I necessarily can come to a conclusion about how I feel, but so my first thing is, like, we've been talking about cloud gaming and streaming and all these things for digital gaming for a while now. In my entire life, I have been a physical collector of things. Now, like, people don't see, but board games behind me.
Just a couple
I always
of them.
collected video games. GameStop gave me the choice to collect or trade in. So that was a hurdle to overcome. So do I feel comfortable not physically owning something? I kind of know I don't. Like, I want to physically own something because it's tangible. You have this. You even if like we just saw the Wii shop shut down or the Wii U shop shut down, or even these things that like go away, you can have something physical that represents a time where you did have that. Also, on the flip side, I have a closet with 3,500 DVDs in it that I can't give away.
Very true.
And I don't have space in my life for them anymore. I have a child that is occupying the space where my collection used to be. So now I have this flip side where I still have all my physical things, but they're useless to me because I don't put DVDs in my Blu-ray player. I go, why don't I just watch it in HD? So that technology itself, at a point, I'm like, I'm never going to get rid of these. Probably what my parents said about vinyl or Laserdisc. Well, vinyl's back, but like it's all like you don't really know where these things are going. So the toughest part is going to be letting go of physical in general for everyone. It's going to be hard for everyone to do that. Some people have already gotten there. Some people are in denial, and some people will never let go of it. But it's going to come to a point where you're the guy who has VHS tapes and no one else has a VHS player. So where do you stop? And I think that's what Stadia is kind of proposing that question to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's making them feel a little bit uncomfortable. And it's making them kind of want to hate Stadia. As far as the announcement, I thought the presentation was phenomenal. That was great. I loved what he said, and you probably know how I am about stuff like this. Phil Harrison's on the stage. He's like, we're going to show you a presentation. We're going to show you how this works. This isn't something set up. This isn't something that we that like we did. This is actually running live. He's going to go do this. And he did. And he's like, we're going to play this on this. And he's like, we went and we found the worst desktop we could find in the area. And we have it running. And then he did it, and he moved seamlessly, and he explained eventually how it was doing that. He didn't explain it right away, but eventually he was like, this is recognizing your device as you go to it, and it's just launching your game. He's like, you can play Assassin's Creed in 5 seconds from this YouTube link. And I think all that potential is amazing.
Right.
Obviously, reports from like show floor on Doom, like the latency issues, are coming up, but you also have the argument where someone's like, well, y'all know game journalists are terrible at playing games, so they can just blame latency on them being bad. That's also true. It might not be likely, but it's true. Now, we also know that Wi-Fi controller is going to reduce latency, so maybe that's the best way to play the game. So yeah, I mean, we also talk about broadband and Wi-Fi being a problem in this country. So that is also going to be a hurdle that needs to be crossed. But I don't know. That's my little warm take. Do you have a hot take on the topic?
So I was one of those people who, when this was announced, I was a little lukewarm on it. Not because I think the technology is a bad idea or that I'm against it. I just wasn't certain if this is where is this what I really want? And for me, I play a lot of, I'm playing a lot of Apex. I'm playing a lot of Overwatch. Like, latency does kind of matter to me. But then I realized that I was kind of being a wet blanket, right? There were people who were really excited about this. And here I am being like, well, what about this? And what about that? And I think it's healthy to be skeptical, but I also haven't bought anything. Like, why can't I be excited with other people who are excited, right? Like, they're not making me buy anything. I haven't purchased anything. We have no idea about what it's going to cost. And all I'm doing is being a crotchety old person about this thing. So I did some research and I did some looking, and Eurogamer actually wrote a really excellent article where they went in depth about how all of this works, how the controller actually connects, how that controller itself reduces the latency that you're going to see. And they actually did some testing using a Pixelbook running Stadia, like doing it basically off of they did it based off of Project Stream, which was kind of like their test bed, the current Google Stadia, and then also ran it at trying to run it at 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, all in HD. They had a pretty healthy internet connection. I think that it was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a pretty healthy connection. It wasn't ridiculous. It wasn't over the top, but it was, I think, not, the minimum spec asking for, but it was a healthy connection, if I recall. But they found that the latency, including the display lag, because obviously there's latency just from the controller input, but then also from the display itself creates lag and latency of what's happening there. They found that the display lag for Stadia was identical to that of an Xbox One X.
Nice.
So that for me was like, oh, okay. So maybe things on the show floor weren't perfect. Yes, maybe some of the people who were playing were having some lag, and that might happen, right? You have an internet hiccup, you have a brief surge or whatever, maybe it's not going to be perfect. But the fact that the technology is this far along, to me, is really hopeful. And when I think about the idea of you and I doing a podcast, immediately after we're done with the podcast, I could just open a browser, pick up controller, and play a game for 20 minutes. I could then walk upstairs and then pull up my phone and play that game on my phone exactly where I had just been. I could go lay in bed and do it. I could do it at work on my lunch break. I could do any of those things and not really have to bring anything with me. That to me is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, we don't know the pricing. We don't know the structure. We don't know if it's going to be a streaming service a la Netflix or, a Game Pass type situation. We don't know if it's going to be individual games that are purchased. Those are the things we don't know yet. One thing that is interesting is that it is a Linux-based system. So games do have to be fully ported to run on Linux. So that is something that is interesting that I didn't know that until I had read that Eurogame article. So it's not just we're running the PC version of the game. The game has to be able to be run on Linux for it to work. So like that AC Odyssey version they're using is a Linux build of the game. So it is a full port that is going to happen for most games. But it sounds like Google is trying to make that as easy as possible to port that to their system. So that is, a small consideration, I guess. But for the most part, it seems pretty awesome. I'm actually far more on board than this than I was initially. I think that obviously Microsoft is kind of in this camp already with xCloud and kind of what they have shown for that. I feel like it seems very similar, maybe not exactly identical, but definitely kind of the same page about what they're trying to do there. I think obviously PlayStation will have to wait and see. I think they obviously have some streaming stuff now, but how does that relate to current games or games that are more up to date than the games that they tend to have on their streaming service? So yeah, I'm much more in on this than I was before. And as someone who does not collect and prize almost everything digitally at this point, this is appealing to me. More appealing than it was initially. That's for sure.
Nice.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about our streaming overlords of the future?
I'm really excited for Stadia just to see what it's going to be. So
yeah. I think that if they are at E3, like many are suggesting or hypothesizing that they will be, I think it is going to be very interesting to see Stadia and Microsoft both present, hey, here is our streaming future.
I know.
And I feel that PlayStation is very happy to not be there.
They sit out and just come out with their thing later.
What are they all doing? Okay, we're going to do that too. Or we're going to try to do that too.
Well, wait, we don't need to announce it now. Everyone knows we're going to do it.
Right. So, last little piece of news. This is more just kind of a general roundup kind of thought process. We're not going to necessarily go in depth into them. But both PlayStation had their first quote unquote live stream titled State of Play. And then Xbox also kind of followed like the Nindies format. Okay, really quick side note. Do you like the term Nindies?
I don't mind it. I mean, I don't mind I like it for Nintendo, but I don't like it for necessarily anything else.
One of the podcasts I listen to really does not like the term, and I just don't think it's that bad. I think it's kind of cute. But anyway, Xbox kind of followed suit that highlighting some indies and did an ID at Xbox Game Pass presentation. So it seems like we're getting to the point where we're getting more and more and more live streams about like, hey, here is a 15 to 20 minute presentation about upcoming games that we want you to be excited about. Please be excited. How do you feel about this? Would you want more of these types of things? Would you rather that they just do, blog posts that spread out throughout a month? Do you want this all kind of in one chunk? What are your thoughts on kind of these video presentations that are 100% becoming the norm between now State of Play, the idea at Xbox stuff, inside Xbox Directs, Nindies? Seems like this is where we're going to be for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I like them because so typically we get like our game trailers like a la carte. We're like, we're like surfing YouTube and we see like a trailer for some game. And that's if you follow like these gaming channels, like an Xbox channel or Nintendo. And that's coming from like Microsoft's not always going to show you a Double Fine trailer. They're going to probably show you a Microsoft trailer and then maybe an EA trailer. So what I like that these do is they have you show up not really knowing what you're getting and you just kind of watch. It's kind of like when you used to, I shouldn't say, it's kind of like when I was a kid and I used to watch MTV. You just turn on MTV and music videos played. And
I know, amazing, right?
You would just watch. You wouldn't know what was up next. You would know like at 11 p.m. is Headbangers Ball, so you're gonna get heavy metal music. You would know at 9 a.m. on Saturday it's gonna be pop music. Like you knew, like so, like Xbox is at 11 and Nintendo's at 9 and PlayStation's at like 1 p.m. Like you know what you're going for, but you don't know what you're getting.
Right.
So you might find something new that is interesting to you. or you might not find anything you like at all, or you might find a bunch of things you had no idea about. So I like that. Whether you're coming for a game trailer or not at all, and you just get a bunch of new ones, you get something out of it. I like the idea that it took them this long to follow Nintendo, but I think they both got the format right, which is what I liked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, there are going to be critics about everything that a company does. There's going to be critics about it, and that's fine. Like if you are a consumer of the product, or even if you're not, you have the right to be critical of what they're showing and all that good stuff. And this is a very small concern. This isn't a big concern. My concern with the move to this style is that there was kind of that philosophy, and that for like the big E3 showcases, or when you have these press showcases that they were doing, that not everything was going to be for you, right? Like there's no way that every game is going to appeal to you, but the show was long enough and they had enough games that some games are going to appeal to you, right? 3, 4, 5 games. When you're condensing these things down to such short segments now, I think there's a higher likelihood that you'll have individuals who'll be like, that was completely worthless for me, which means it was bad.
Right.
Right. So I think that's maybe the danger for them with these formats. When you look at the state of play one from PlayStation, and I was on PSXP this week talking about it, for me as a PSVR owner, it was great. There was a lot of things that I was very excited about. If you are not a PSVR owner, not too many new things for you to be stoked about, right? That Mortal Kombat trailer was awesome.
It was great.
But you were probably already excited. But like you were already excited for Mortal Kombat, right?
Yeah.
So,
but they did drop 3 new character reveals. So
that is true.
Exciting.
That is true. So I think that's kind of the danger when they get to these more curated, more direct, more fine-tuned, shorter things. Is just the possibility that you are going to have people who are like, well, none of those things were things I'm interested in, so that was bad as a result of that.
Well,
so
we're at this point where you can't please everyone, and I don't know that they need to change that format, right? So we talked on Discord. I was disappointed by the state of play, but not for the way that it was presented, but I didn't know it was going to be mostly VR stuff. And like we talked about that, and like that's something you said you knew was happening, and you had your expectations in line with that.
Right.
And that happened with PlayStation at E3 last year. Like Devin was totally copacetic with their presentation. He's like, I don't know where you guys all were. This is exactly what I knew was going to happen.
Yeah, it's exactly what they said it was going to be.
Yeah, and for me, I'm like, well, I didn't do any research because I knew the idea of what this was.
Right.
This was PlayStation's E3 presentation.
Right.
Why do I want to do more research? I want to be surprised.
Right.
Okay, so like that's just on me as a consumer. And you're right. Like I have just as much of a right to voice my concern about not enjoying it as you do to say that it was for you.
Right.
The problem with the internet is people, not Sony, not Microsoft, not Nintendo, are telling other people their opinions are wrong. And
right.
You're never going to avoid that. So I think for every compliment, there's a critic, and you have to kind of just ignore those people. And people try to make a living on going onto YouTube and making videos about how bad a performance was or how good a state of play was. That's what they do. And it's for the same reason why all this love and all this hate is out there.
Right.
And, if it stops someone from doing something, then obviously the hate part wins. So, as much as that PlayStation state of play was not for me, I say, even if the next one is all VR stuff, keep doing it. Maybe you're going to convert someone to VR. Maybe I'm going to watch it and see that game that says, okay, Josh, you need to start putting money aside today to get a PSVR. Or maybe not.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I will say, for better or for worse, after PlayStation's presentation, there was a lot of feedback on social media, we'll say.
Yeah.
And a number of the PlayStation people were actually interacting with people and asking them, oh, what didn't you like about it? Or why did you say that wasn't for you? So you don't...
That's good.
Right. So, and it's now granted, were they talking to everyone about that? No, but it was definitely talking to people who maybe, I don't want to say are well known in the PlayStation universe, but people who regularly talk about PlayStation, which is a lot of who I follow on Twitter. It's like board game people and PlayStation people. Like that's like basically who I follow on Twitter. So there was a lot of interaction there from that perspective.
Yeah.
I do think though, you're right. Like I'm someone who I check the PlayStation blog every single day. I read it daily. I don't read the Xbox Wire daily. So when there was like, hey, they're doing this ID at Xbox thing, I was like, sweet, where do I find it? Like, I don't know exactly where to go to find the thing. You know, like I'm not totally certain about how that's going to happen. So I watched it. I was like, that was cool. That was some awesome games. Like those are all really cool. For me, the biggest thing was like, wow, Xbox is really exemplifying the value of Game Pass. Like Game Pass is a thing that if you own an Xbox, you should have, period. Like that is what that service has gotten to today. I was actually looking on it today because I was looking to download Vampire or however you say that game, which I don't think is actually on the service yet. It's just coming this month. It's coming this month because I really want to play it actually. And I'm like, I'm so excited this game is on there. But as I was scrolling through the list of games, I was like, oh man, this is on here. And this is on here. Oh man, this is on here. Like it is a ridiculous service. So I think that, you know, they're all doing kind of their own thing. They're marketing in a similar way, but with very different messages right now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm excited about this. I think the one thing I will say, and this could be true about all of the stuff, you know, and I think Seth says this pretty regularly of like, well, that could have been a blog post. Every single one in both of these presentations could have been a blog post. Every single one of them. But that doesn't mean that it still wasn't cool to see them all put together.
You reach a wider audience with videos. Mm-hmm. Like, so I'm not going to go read a PlayStation blog post.
I read them every day.
I know you do, but
I do.
Not, you know, I just don't. So that reaches me effectively.
Absolutely. Any other general things you want to chat about before we wrap our show up? Anything else that's on your mind, good sir?
Yeah. Hey, how cool was it to have Jamey on? Like, I'm still like the whole show I've been like just thinking about it. How cool that is.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I think, you know, listener, like if you don't know, Jamey, I think the man genuinely works like 80 hours a week. Like not joking. He is constantly online. He has on Stonemaier Games, the blog has hundreds and hundreds of posts about like Kickstarter and lessons learned and just general stuff about all that. He posts like 3 YouTube videos a week. He is on podcast constantly. He is on Board Game Geek posting stuff and replying to people. He'll reply to basically everyone on Twitter. Like, I don't know how he does it.
Just for like to our listeners, there's a lot of people that I reach out to potentially come on our show. People don't respond. People aren't interested. People blow me off 3 years straight. Matt Morgan.
Wow. I mean, we don't need to say that out loud. Jeez.
He doesn't listen. Jamey didn't have to come on here. In fact, we were just talking before we recorded, and today the Dice Tower just dropped an interview that they just had with him. So he clearly just did another interview. So it's really humbling and flattering for him to come on for us and just record and talk to us and know that like we're like passionate about board games. And like when I reached out to him, I kind of just gave him a background of our podcasts. Just he didn't ask for it. I just put that out there. I talked about how you and I started this and what we do. And he replied back and he's like, thank you for sharing that story about how you guys started. He's like, I already looked at some of your show titles. I'm already interested in some of your episodes. Because I'm like, if you want to listen, like everyone before we come on, I'm saying, if you want to check us out before you say yes, please feel free to listen to an episode. Mm-hmm. So there's people that like he didn't have to do that. And he was very generous, giving us his time. You know, we don't pay any of our guests and we don't get paid to do this.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, those are things I think about. It's just so nice that we could honestly sit here and the two of us do this every week and we would be fine. Like, no problem.
Right.
But the fact that we, one, have the opportunity to have people on, and two, that people like Jamey and Colin and Emerson and William and all these people and Dan Machado that are willing to come on and talk with us, and so, is great. And I'm constantly amazed and happy about it every time it happens. So
I agree. We are definitely very grateful for all of that good stuff. So
yeah.
All right. Any other final words of wisdom? So that was nice. That was very.
That can be my words. It's definitely not words of wisdom. Words of observation.
There you go. That works too. Really quick. Saw the story. It was a kind of late breaking story to us recording on Tuesday here, but EA announced that they're laying off 350 employees, about 4% of their workforce. The one thing I will say, now obviously layoffs are stink, and it's interesting because this is definitely not getting the press that Activision did when they did theirs. But it seems to be that most of these layoffs are in non-development positions. Right. They are in marketing. They are in kind of that sort of stuff. I feel like maybe there is being a leveling out or a recognition that maybe marketing for video games is just different than it used to be. And that it's not necessarily about working with ad agencies to get huge commercial spots and like all of these things. Like those obviously are still going to happen, but it seems like it's so much more grassroots now that it isn't about people at the company being advocates and pushing your game. It's about finding passionate gamers who talk about it just because they like it. And I think there's some good to that, right? Because you're getting people who are invested in a game, who are evangelizing about how amazing it is and how much they enjoy it, how much they like it. We do that on this podcast, right? We occasionally get games for review, but for the most part, we're like buying games and talking about how awesome they are and encouraging people to go spend their money on them, right?
Yeah, or giving games away because we got some for free.
Right, exactly. Or, for a lot of our prizes for things, we're buying them and giving them out, So right. We're kind of doing that. And I think that this industry has become so community focused, which I think is good, that it seems like maybe some of those positions just aren't as important or as needed as they used to be, and that the traditional methods for advertising and all of that kind of stuff might be dwindling away a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I hope that that's the case. I mean, I'd rather it be an overflow situation, like, oh my God, there's 200 people in marketing. We only need 100. Like, I hope that's more the situation, because then we would see it less regularly in that case. And I agree, like, video game marketing is essentially free marketing now because it's E3. It's
right,
like digital press events.
Well, E3 is very expensive.
Yeah, but like for some companies who are just on the show floor, it's not as expensive as
a huge stage show.
Ad space and magazines, which people don't even get anymore. I mean, people get magazines, but it's nowhere near what like mailer magazines were like 10 years ago.
Right.
I mean, like there's 3 video game magazines left.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff has changed. So I'm sure that's part of it. And I hope that that's just the case. But of course, once again, we see Gearbox and other companies jump into the rescue, posting positions that they're hiring and trying to help out these people that just got laid off. So it's nice to see that as well in the gaming industry. Right.
Yeah, it's just very. It seems like things are changing, and I think about the fact of it seems like we're definitely in general people are finding influencers that they tend to jive with or have similar taste to, and taking a lot of credence from what they say in regards to, you should check this game out, or I played this game and I really enjoyed it. One example of I haven't purchased it yet but is on my watch list is a puzzle game on Switch called Baba Is You. This was a game that a podcaster that I listened to was raving about it and saying this is Ape Out was kind of like that first indie this year that people were like, oh my gosh, this is game of the year. And now Baba Is You, which when you look at it, you're like, why would I ever buy this game? But they are just raving about how amazing this game is. And I'm like, I don't know anything. I know it's a puzzle game. I have a general idea kind of how it works. It's $15. Why not? We'll give it a whirl, And I think, Hempuli, I think, is the developer of that game. They, they're not marketing to anyone, they're not really talking about it. But I think there's definitely a change in how the industry is working. And it wouldn't surprise me to see more and more that, social media teams and things like that stay kind of strong, but that the general traditional marketing methods are things that we see less and less. So awesome. Well, hey, this is clearly a gaming podcast. We love talking about games. But we want to give you one recommendation, suggestion, thing we are into currently that is helping us live a well-rounded life. So like I said, this isn't going to be something gaming related, but just a recommendation to you, dear listener, that we feel is going to hopefully be something that if you participate in or take advantage of will be meaningful in a positive way for you. So Josh, what is your recommendation this week for a well-rounded life?
I'm not going to drop anything crazy like do things for friends or anything like crazy, like hug your wife, things that I usually sprinkle into there.
But really briefly, you did watch one of my recommendations.
Oh my God, I did. I didn't want to put it as a well-rounded life thing though, because I'm not sure that it improves my life at all.
But it was a good documentary, right?
So I watched Behind the Curve, as Kyle recommended on Netflix. This is the Flat Earther documentary. Yeah, why not? Let's make this my well-rounded life.
No, you can still use yours.
That's okay. I'll use mine for next week.
Okay.
I'll talk about it. I watched it with my wife. We sat down for lunch on Sunday while the baby was sleeping, taking his nap, I should say, because we couldn't really figure out what we wanted to watch on Netflix. Although the Jimmy Carr special, the new one, is fantastic.
I watched that as well. That was really good.
So good. Yeah, it's this documentary kind of took me all over the place. I didn't, Kyle talked about it. He didn't get into too much detail. I think enough that like when they did things, I was like, oh yeah, Kyle warned me about this, or Kyle said this. This is how I'd summarize it. It centers around a egomaniac who thinks he's the center of the flat earth, who literally wears t-shirts that has his name on them.
Yeah.
He compares himself to visionaries, powerful people, celebrities. He's
confident, Josh. That's okay. Like we all should be that confident.
In a high school relationship with another they're both people well over their 40s that are in like a high school relationship where they won't admit that they're in a relationship. It's very bizarre, almost like watching a reality show. There's these weird feuds. There's a guy who's clearly Randy Quaid levels of crazy now that's in this. There's people sabotaging themselves, each other. People flat out insulting each other to each other's faces and playing it off as a compliment. Kyle, this has everything. It has infuriating comparisons. Yeah. All of a sudden, 45 minutes into the documentary, you find out that every flat earther is apparently a conspiracy theorist. And this woman, seems like it. I'm going to say it. This woman says, everything's a conspiracy. She won't believe that the Boston Marathon bombing was real unless she literally lost like herself.
Yep, that's what she says.
She then gets mad because people think that she works for the CIA.
Yep.
And they basically are spouting the same exact things she's saying about everything else. But then she gets mad because they believe she is in a conspiracy. So I guess I don't believe her unless I'm literally sitting in her cat-filled house. Well, by the way, everyone in this documentary has cats. Every single person is a crazy cat person. And they do tests that prove themselves wrong and then refuse to believe the months of work they put into making sure the test would be accurate. The guy even says, like, I can't show this video. I think you told me I can't show this video footage because it will prove us wrong.
Right.
And then he shows it anyways. It was maddening and frustrating and intriguing and fascinating all at the same time. I really wish Donald Trump would just give them the $18 million he cut out of Education Today and let them go do their ice wall test so we can just end the debate.
Oh, it was specifically from the Special Olympics, which is very sad.
Yeah.
Which is like all the federal funding they get.
So. Yeah, I got a little too political there because there was another $51 million that was taken out of autism. schooling. So yeah, they believe there's an ice wall that is, as they say,
just like Game of Thrones.
When you're trying to further your cause, you should not reference your theories from science fiction in specific books
or fantasy.
Yeah, like don't do that. Say, I don't know, Kyle. That movie made me so mad.
But it made you feel something, right? It made you feel something.
Yeah, well, Well-Rounded Life was never more on point than on this documentary.
It is interesting, though, because I get fascinated by, like, there are parts of that documentary where I really legitimately thought, I'm like, this has to be a joke. This can't be true. Like, they have to be doing this for the camera.
But he even says that. Like, people think we're joking. He says it in the documentary.
I know. And then that made me realize that they're probably not joking. So.
That movie. Yeah, go watch it, everybody. Behind the Curve on Netflix.
Awesome. Well, hey, my recommendation is a little Marvel movie called Captain Marvel, which I actually was going to use last week, but then I wanted to keep the documentary train rolling because I did see it opening weekend.
Oh, don't worry. I kept it rolling. On a roll.
Which I appreciate. So I will switch it up this week, and I'm going to go ahead and recommend seeing Captain Marvel. I really enjoyed this film. I didn't have high expectations. I had really no expectations. I'm not as we've talked about before, like I'm not super knowledgeable about actual like hero comic books. I never really read superhero comics at all. So I knew of Captain Marvel generally, but that was about it. But I enjoyed this film. I had a good time with it. It was a good popcorn flick. I think it is a nice setup for what we have coming, in about a month with Avengers Endgame. So I recommend it. I think you should go check it out and enjoy yourself and eat some popcorn and a beverage of your choice, depending on what your theater serves, and just have a good time. Have you seen you saw this movie, right?
No, it's been killing me.
Oh, that's right. Kevin saw it, and you have not yet.
We haven't been able to get a sitter, so we did get a sitter, and what did we do? We spent our day ripping up carpet and tax strips at my friend's new house they just bought. So we didn't get.
Well, that's nice of you.
Marvel.
That was nice of you. So there is overall, like I said, I like this movie. There is one part that's a little on the nose for me, but other than that, it was a pretty solid flick. So again, a big thanks to Jamey Stegmaier for joining us this week. We really appreciate his time. Josh, what do you say we wrap this show up?
Thanks for joining us, everyone. In addition to finding us on Twitter and Instagram at Bored with Video Games, or at Bored with VG, I should say, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/boredwithvg. So feel free to give us a 5-star rating over there. Also, if you want to communicate in the more long form, or you are not feeling social media, feel free to email us at boredwithvg@gmail.com. We tag our stuff with hashtag boredwithvg, so please use that hashtag as well on all social media. And whatever podcast service you're listening to us on, we encourage you to give us a stellar rating. That is, whether you are downloading us from the PSVG feed, the Dice Tower Network feed, or our own standalone Bored with Video Games feed. You can find me on Xbox Live and PlayStation Network at Why So Serious. That's SIRRIUS. Kyle, where can people find you?
You can find me at all of the usual places: Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, Board Game Geek, all at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. If you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social media. That would include guests. If there's certain people you'd love to hear on the show, let us know. We'll reach out to them. Hopefully they'll say yes, because we'd love to have them on. And remember, everyone, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.